we're hearing from people all the time who know that that eviction notice is coming because they simply cannot afford to pay their rent and they're absolutely desperate. I'm Polly Neat and I'm the Chief Executive of Shelter.
Shelter has just released a new report. Tell me what it's all about.
In short, what we found is that 1 in 7 private renters in England, so that's about 1.1 million people, have had their rent increased in just the last month. 1 in 3 are spending at least half their total household income on rent. Now, what is generally considered affordable, a maximum that's affordable, is to spend a third of your household income on housing costs. So half is not affordable by the accepted, it's not our definition, it's the totally generally accepted definition. So what is the situation is basically is that at the heart of the cost of living crisis is a cost of housing crisis. And we really need the government to understand that and take some immediate action in order to help private renters, because otherwise what we're going to be seeing is a dramatic increase in homelessness.
2.5 million renters are either behind or constantly struggling to pay their rent, and that's increased by 45% since April this year. So why has there been such a drastic increase in such a short period of time?
Rents in the private rented sector are going up dramatically. Of course, that in itself is a result of the cost of living crisis because landlords' costs are going up, and that's then passed on to tenants inevitably. So I think the main cause is the dramatic increase in the cost of renting. But of course, it isn't helped by the fact that fuel costs are going up dramatically. Everything's going up dramatically. So inflation, we all know, we're all experiencing this. Inflation is increasing dramatically.
Is there a specific group of people that is experiencing this the most?
There are 11 million private renters in this country, right? And they're quite a wide spectrum of people. So if a third of those are spending more than half their income on rent, then now that covers quite a wide spectrum of people. So of course it includes people who are on the lowest incomes. But what this is showing is that private renting is just becoming more and more and more unaffordable.
Is it more people in like urban settings, in like city areas?
You know, people often kind of assume that this problem is confined to London, but actually that's old news. It absolutely is not just confined to London.
More broadly, how would you say the cost of living crisis is impacting people who are experiencing homelessness?
What we need to remember is that about half of private renters have got no savings at all. So what that means is that the cost of living crisis adding to their expenditure and the things that they have to spend money on, so heating, eating, rent, all of that, um, uh, means that, you know, any increase in their expenditure is going to tip them over the edge because if you have no savings, then you have no cushion for when there's an emergency. And so I'm really worried that homelessness is going to increase because of the cost of living crisis. I think that's inevitable. For people who are already homeless and in temporary accommodation, I mean, these are people that we are seeing day in and day out at Shelter and hearing from on our emergency helpline. I mean, to be honest, it's absolutely heartbreaking because if you were close to the edge or on the edge anyway, then you are well over the edge now. And we've only just started this crisis as well. This is going to get worse. And I guess that's why I'm saying the government has to act because homelessness is a trauma. It's particularly, or for anyone, but particularly for families with children, it is absolutely devastating. And if you're a child and you're made homeless, you don't get your childhood back. We only have one childhood. And if you spend that childhood moving around totally unsuitable temporary accommodation, having to move schools, getting behind with your work, not being able to ever invite friends home, that is a lifelong damage that those children experience.
And have you already seen a rise in the numbers of people experiencing homelessness since the cost of living crisis started?
Yeah, we're seeing a rise in people experiencing homelessness already, a rise in people who feel like they're kind of one bill away from homelessness. And that's what we hear in our emergency helpline, which is our sort of frontline homelessness prevention service. We're hearing from people all the time who know that that eviction notice is coming because they simply cannot afford to pay their rent and they're absolutely desperate.
You mentioned earlier about how there's already such limited resources to support people experiencing it. So could you tell me more about that?
Now, temporary accommodation is already home to well over 250,000 people at any one time, well over 130,000 children at any one time. So it's already overcrowded. We already have 1.1 million people on the waiting list for social housing. And yet, every year, we're going backwards in the delivery of new social homes. So, what I mean by that is we're selling or demolishing more social homes than we're actually building. So, we're in kind of negative all the time. So it's actually a ridiculous situation.
The cost of living crisis isn't expected to end anytime soon. So could you predict like how this issue is going to evolve over time?
So what we're going to see is more and more rent increases, more and more people not able to afford their rent, more and more people evicted, and therefore an increase in homelessness because there are not any social homes for these people to go into. There isn't anything for them.
What does Shelter think are like the main priorities that should be taken by the government to address this issue?
Well, housing benefit is frozen. So as rents go up, your housing benefit stays the same. So if you're on housing benefit, the gap between the benefit level and your rent level is going to get bigger and bigger. So a benefit that is actually designed to keep people in their homes, that's the point of it, is to prevent homelessness, right? It's totally failing to prevent homelessness because it's been frozen. So the government need to unfreeze that benefit as quickly as possible. And if people don't want a kind of exponential increase in the housing benefit bill, which I can understand politicians won't want, right? In order to keep that as an emergency measure, they urgently need to deliver social housing. It's not impossible, it's not difficult, it's just that the affordable housing programme the government is investing in isn't delivering social homes. If it was, right, then we would gradually be seeing an easing of this issue because for people who can't afford private renting, they would have somewhere else to rent that is affordable. But at the moment, the only thing the government can do to stop a dramatic increase in homelessness is to increase housing benefit.